ABC's wide world of sports. It's really hard to believe. And today we begin our new year with two sports that are deeply ingrained in the history and the tradition of our show. From Atlantic City, we'll have amateur boxing as the USA, second ranked in the world, takes on the top-ranked Cubans in a duel match. And then we'll go to Churchill Downs for the Derby trial, the final chance for a 3-year-old to break out of the pack before next Saturday's Kentucky Derby, and you'll watch both events live. For more, let's go first to Atlantic City, and here's Don Chevrier.
Cuba is home to the world's most dominant boxing team. They identify the best athletes early, placing the cream of the crop in the hands of KG head coach Alcides Segura, architect and keeper of this boxing juggernaut. In hopes of upgrading the United States program, the Americans have enlisted the services and expertise of Sugar Ray Leonard. Ray's experience and talent is a deep well from which young boxers can drink freely. Today, we'll see one of Ray's proteges, Andrew Maynard, try to complete his comeback from injury at last year's Pan Am Games. He looks to avenge his loss to the Cubans there. Today, live on Wide World of Sports, it's the USA versus Cuba in boxing.
It's time to come home to Kentucky. Everybody's old Kentucky home from now until the Kentucky Derby is run next Saturday. Much of this state is a living museum of the thoroughbred. This is where so many Derby winners have been conceived, foaled, and broken. Whether it's the limestone and the bluegrass or what, no one is sure, but Kentucky breeds champion horses. Champion humans, too, like Woodford Cephas Stevens, the pride of Midway, Kentucky. One of Woody's charges was Caveat. Caveat won the Derby trial, but in the Derby itself, he seemed out of it as they turned into the stretch. But Caveat means beware, and that's what his Derby finish said to the colts who finished ahead of him. He found revenge in the Belmonts. Now Woody Stevens returns to the Derby trial with Cephas, a son of Caveat who bears his trainer's middle name. He comes from out of it like his daddy. In the Tampa Bay Derby, he loafed along until they turned from home. Then he was a carbon copy of his sire as he rushed past the leaders and marked himself as a true Derby horse. So this afternoon, Cephas comes as Caveat did to the Derby trial, that last sharpener before the great race itself. You'll see it live along with a preview of the Kentucky Derby. Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition. This is ABC's Wide World of Sport.
I'm Rogelio Marcelo. But so far today, the Cuban domination continues, 7 bouts to 1 over the United States. Hello again, everybody. I'm Don Chevrier, and welcome. If the Cubans stick to their boycott this year of the Seoul Olympics, this could be the only confrontation between the U.S. and Cuba in world amateur boxing competition. Of course, the Cubans dominate, except for the Olympic year. Somehow the Americans come through then. I want to welcome Alex Wallo, our analyst, back to us today. And Alex, I want to say this to you, that if the Cubans are number 1, are the Americans indeed the number 2 team?
Don, I think the Cuban team is so deep that they could field a second team, a B team, that could really be considered the number 1 team in the world. The Cuban story in amateur boxing really is one of the remarkable stories in all of the world of sports. They have consistently, for the last 2 decades, fielded teams from their little island of 10 million people that have dominated such major sports powers as the United States and the Soviet Union. And the reason for that is not just the fact that they don't have professional boxing. We, of course, would love to have Mike Tyson fighting super heavyweight here today. But they are able to dominate the Soviet Union, which has hundreds of millions more in population, and no professional boxing either. The answer, I think, lies in the fact that Cuba has a tremendous boxing tradition. In the pre-Castro days, they had outstanding professionals like Kid Gavilan. And since the Castro days, they've had a Teofilo Stevenson to inspire them. They have motivation because there's so few ways for a Cuban to rise up in the society that they've established down there. And they have a great knack for identifying athletes, potential boxers at a very early age, getting them outstanding coaching all the way up the ladder. And that, Don, has brought about teams that have tremendous desire, tremendous conditioning, and tremendous skills.
Well, it would all help account for the fact that the scores in U.S.-Cuba meets look like Baltimore Orioles' early season scores. The Cubans dominate just so well, and again they have today. But a little man with big hopes carries the United States flag. Michael Carbajal, who won in Cuba, he will face Marcelo, the new Cuban. He was the only one to win in the dual meet back in Santa Clara in the month of December. He's a bit of a loner. Let's learn more about Michael Carbajal now. In a backyard under a warm Phoenix, Arizona blue sky is a makeshift training camp known as the Carbajal 9th Street Gym. It is an exclusive boxing club. Michael Carbajal is its only member. You won't find fancy high-tech gadgets here. Desire, sweat, and a love for the sport is all that's needed. His father and brother at his side, they help Michael realize his true potential.
I get a lot of influence from my whole family. Mainly my brother and my father. They come back and work real hard. They work me out real hard.
Manuel Carbajal keeps a close eye over his son's workouts at home. Once a boxer himself, Michael feels his father is a big influence in his boxing career.
He didn't get as far as he would have liked to, and I would have liked to see him get. I never seen him fight before. I wish I would have. But right now, he is the biggest influence right now.
And here is Michael Carbajal in the ring for yet another Cuban challenge. Alex, what do you make of his chances?
Well, Michael Carbajal has been successful versus the Cubans and others because he puts relentless pressure on it. He doesn't let his opponent get set up. The Cuban style really needs to begin with the jab, and Michael puts on such tremendous pressure that the Cubans like Rogelio Marcelo have not been able to get set. Marcelo is unknown. In this country, he does have some international experience. He's won 3 international events last year in Europe.
Well, he's determined to show that he can beat Carbajal where Juan Torres could not do so. He's the one that Carbajal beat back in December in Santa Clara, Cuba. Here are the rules of amateur boxing. The white portion of the glove is the area that counts. The referee has 3 commands. They are stop, box, and break, the international language. They use the 8 count, and the scoring is done on the 20-point must system. 3 ringside judges. The referee doesn't score. The judges today, 1 from Cuba, 1 from the U.S., and 1 from 3 neutral countries. Canada, along with the Dominican Republic, are involved in the role of neutrals here. And so the judging has not been that bad, although Americans were disappointed earlier with some results they thought might have gone their way. This obviously partisan crowd here in Atlantic City this afternoon. Carbajal is 21 years of age. Marcelo is 22. He was the runner-up to Torres in the Cuban National. Got a big challenge facing him here because Carbajal's reputation precedes it.
Carbajal has those 2 wins over the world champion, Juan Torres, and so the Cubans decided, let's send up Marcelo and see if he has a style as a southpaw that's better for beating a Michael Carbajal.
These are little guys, just 106 pounds. Arthur Johnson, not much bigger at 112, still to come, along with a giant of a man by comparison, Andrew Maynard, the light heavyweight, with so much promise.
Just saw the right hand of Michael Carbajal. That's his main weapon. He scores points with his left jab, but he scores with power with his right hand.
Look how tentative the Cuban is with his right hand, not very authoritative.
Just as I said that, Michael put a nice, strong, powerful left jab on Marcelo.
Obviously not intent on hanging around very long. He's getting in and out very quickly, too quickly against Carbajal.
But he's made Michael a little bit tentative here. For Michael Carbajal to be successful, he must be first. He must be aggressive. He must get off first. And right now, that movement, maybe the southpaw style, is giving Carbajal a little bit of trouble.
This Cuban team is stacked with southpaws, Alex.
That shouldn't be as much of a problem for an amateur than it is for a pro. There's so many more southpaws in the amateurs. There you saw a classic Cuban jab, right jab in this case, in and out. And there again, Marcelo tried it.
Well, the second half of brisk action, most of it the motoring by Carbajal in pursuit of Marcelo.
A little bit of showboating there for Marcelo. That's inexperience. Alcides Segura in his corner, in the Cuban corner, as he has been for the last quarter century, will get rid of that. They don't like showboating on the Cuban team.
The referee who does not score the fight is Asdrubal Arranz from Cuba. Judges in this one from the United States, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic.
Good left lead there by Marcelo. In and out, picking his spots. Again, not letting Carbajal get set up and get into his flow. There was a good right hand. And 2 good body punches, and another by Carbajal.
Now Carbajal with a series of blows, taking it to him in the Cuban corner.
Low left there by Carbajal, a little bit below the belt.
And a caution for holding from the Cuban referee. That's the first sustained attack that Carbajal has gotten off against Marcelo.
Just on a first impression, Don, Marcelo does two things a little bit unusual. One, he carries his hands very low for a Cuban, and two, he looks to be not as well conditioned as we're used to seeing Cuban athletes. He's sucking for wind right now, and it's just the first round.
You assume they're all superbly conditioned, don't you, having watched them over the years? That may not always be the case. Again, he's trying to stay away from Carbajal. Tentative in the last seconds. Just 3 rounds in amateur boxing, so when you get behind, there's not an awful lot of time to catch up.
They do tend to use that 20-point must system with greater flexibility, though, Don. You can score a 2017, 2016,
yes,
even a 2016 round in amateur boxing. You climb back into it in a hurry. I thought there wasn't much in that first round. I didn't think either fighter dominated. There you saw the evenness of the bout. Two men just landing punches simultaneously.
I thought the one sustained attack by Carbajal might have swung around in his favor when he pinned him against the ropes for about 20 seconds or more. He tries to contain him here, but the slippery Marcelo continues to get away.
And that's just what the Cuban corner told Marcelo to do in between rounds. Stick and move. Don't stay around. They want him to work to the body a little bit more.
And he's got a loose lace or two that'll attend to in the Cuban corner.
No te muevas loco, no te muevas tanto, Marcelo. Okay.
The Cubans paying a return visit to the United States after the dual meet in Santa Clara, Cuba, we talked about earlier back in December when the Cubans won 11-1. They've won all 14 dual meets so far. They lead this one 7-1 this afternoon in Atlantic City. Carbajal getting off very, very quickly again. And there is Manuel.
Danny Carbajal.
And Danny, the brother, they both trained Michael Carbajal, as you saw earlier.
Michael's just waiting a little bit too long to let his hands go. Trying to be a little bit too perfect. He told us yesterday, Don, as you remember, that he was trying to put a little bit more boxing skill into his game plan. Didn't want to just be a winging aggressor. He may be thinking a little bit too much here.
Halfway in round 2.
And he's also chasing Marcelo. He's not cutting the ring off. He's letting Marcelo get him off balance.
As we say, he only did contain him for a sustained attack once back in the first round, but he's been chasing him, as you say. Michael, a very unassuming young man, has no master plan. He just uses the old cliche, one fight at a time. That's his approach to it as he builds toward the Olympic Games. But he is in a lighter weight class where the host country, the Koreans in particular, they're going to be very, very tough if he gets that far.
Good right hand follow there by Michael Carbajal. If you can't be first, you better be last. He finished that exchange.
You bet. How much of the judging in amateur boxing is contained to the final 30 seconds of the round?
Well, I think that, you know, people remember what they've most recently seen. I think that's a human factor, and very difficult to judge. A competent judge will not let it affect them. He'll judge the totality of the bout. And the great referee Arthur McCanny had a system where he divided the bout into thirds and scored it by who won each minute of each round. Good combination there by Michael Carbajal. And Carbajal ignoring the Cuban referee and not getting a caution for it. I'm surprised.
Well, the Cuban is cautioned for a low head, for ducking under. A dozen seconds now as they tick down in the second round. And again, as was the case late in round 1, an impressive finish to this round by American Michael Carbajal. Stay with us. Marcelo of Cuba has not fared much better against Michael Carbajal than Torres, his countryman, did back in December when Michael won the only bout for the United States in Santa Clara. Marcelo simply, as the referee attains to a loose piece of tape in the Cuban's glove,
and you see the Cuban
able to contain him.
You see the Cuban's mouthpiece come out right away. He needs air. He has been in a little bit of trouble in terms of his condition since the first round. And every little break like that, the shoelace, the tape, helps Marcelo.
Well, he's had European experience and Caribbean experience internationally, but not to the extent of Torres.
Caution there for slapping rather than hitting with the white portion. You saw that right-handed slap and another one there by... See, that punch landed by the Cuban, but it was not with the white portion of the glove, and he should have been cautioned for it.
Roundhouse for the inside portion, you're right.
Boy, he wound up with a bolo punch there.
This Cuban referee in particular very lax. Of course, some dominate or tend to, overshadowing the action, but this man's very laid back. Of course, course, the United States team has a secret weapon now. So much of a secret. Sugar Ray Leonard, special advisor to them, and he's been urging them on all day long.
His advice there was punch him, Mike. Yeah. He hasn't become as good as a coach yet as he was as a fighter.
But he's a great motivator. I mean, he can really get you cranked up.
Yeah, the kids love to have him around.
His biggest message for the United States team is develop spirit and show it as a team.
To put on the kind of aggression we talked about at the top of the fight, Michael Carbajal must be in tremendous condition. It's halfway through the final round. And the Cuban seems to have a little bit the better of it right now in terms of conditioning. He's landing more punches.
Now, that may sound strange for a 3-round bout, but it's so intense that you can run out of gas pretty easily, even in the 3rd round.
It's the pace of amateur boxing that is so exhausting. They could never fight it. A good right-hand lead by Carbajal. And a flailing amateurish, for an amateur fighter, left hand by Marcelo.
His inexperience is showing, and the talents of Carbajal are shining through late in the bout. Cuban missing with both hands, seems to be constantly off balance now. Takes a solid right from Carbajal. Cuban continues to paw with the jab and then offer a soft right to follow it. So Carbajal may have the Americans well on their way to a 2nd victory here in Atlantic City today. Less than 30 seconds to go in the final round.
Anytime you see that much mouthpiece from a boxer, you know he's tired.
He's short of air.
Again, Marcelo spending too much time on the ropes, and Michael Carbajal making hay.
And making it impressively. Just seconds to go and an obvious Carbajal victory. Impressive indeed. ABC's Wide World of Sports will return after this message and a word from our local stations. Did Michael Carbajal win that bout as it looked very much to us he did? We're going to find out now from the decision here at ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this contest with a 2-1 score in the red corner.
Oh boy. Here we go. I could swear I'm back in Paris watching Pernell Whitaker.
Well, I don't think that was that bad a robbery. I mean, I don't think Michael Carbajal, I thought he waited too long. I thought he did enough to win it by 1 point. I had it winning by 1 point.
I had it by more than that, but
he just never dominated the fight. The fight was up for grabs.
Well, I really thought the Cuban was much too tentative, and Carbajal got the short end of the stick. So still just 1 victory for the United States, and they'll go on now to 112-pound class with Arthur Johnson against Pedro Reyes, a world-class boxer, an experienced fighter at 29, who is a world champion but never an Olympic champion. He missed, of course, in '84 as you look at him now in the locker room, and he may miss again this time if they boycott Seoul. Let's update that situation now with Donna De Verona.
January 1959. Fidel Castro's band of revolutionaries deposed the Batista regime, and the medal of a nation is recast. Communism in Cuba readjusted their priorities. Sports became an important propaganda tool, and as the signs proclaimed, a right of the people. There have been successes in track and field, and the Cuban baseball team is among the world's elite. But it is the boxers who are Cuba's showpiece. With an Olympic success rate of 5% higher than that of the Soviets, and 34% higher than that of the United States, they are the world's best. But as of now, the Cuban boxers will not be going to the 1988 Summer Olympics.
Right now, Cuba's participation in the Olympics is suspended, pending the possibility of co-hosting the Games by both parts of Korea. The Cuban athletes are preparing themselves, but would attend only if the Games are co-hosted. This is the decision made by our Cuban Olympic Committee.
So for the second consecutive Summer Olympics, the Cubans will be absent. Or will they? The deadline to accept an invitation to participate in the Olympic Games passed 3 months ago. The Cubans didn't respond, but the door's still open?
Because of the special situation that occurs between South Korea and North Korea, and because Cuba is intertwined in that relationship and the negotiation with North Korea, the executive board of the IOC felt that it was in the best interest of sport, frankly, that we leave the door open and continue to explore any possibility as a gesture of goodwill.
What are the chances they'll compete?
The door is still open, but I think it's closing slowly.
There have also been rumblings that the Cubans' host role for the 1991 Pan American Games would be in jeopardy unless they participate in Seoul. But those threats seem to have dissolved. With communist allies East Germany and the Soviet Union now committed to attending the Games, the Cubans will stand alone. Once again, the athlete will pay the full price for a government's political policies. This is Donna De Verona.
At 112 pounds.
You're looking there at Cuban world champion Pedro Reyes, the reigning world champion. I think a little bit tall in that 5'4.5", and at 29 years of age, the oldest member of this Cuban squad.
From Minneapolis, Minnesota.
His opponent today is Arthur Johnson, Minneapolis, Minnesota, who's been the outstanding United States fighter, 112 pounds for 3 years, but he has yet to break through and really establish himself in the world class, Don.
Well, Arthur Johnson, a 3-time United States champion, won a Goodwill Games gold medal, so he's had plenty of experience internationally. In against the man who heads this Cuban team, certainly in experience and world stature, Pedro Reyes. And he's boxing Johnson is off a very tough decision against Michael Carbajal a few minutes ago here. Gives the Cubans an 8-1 edge, not an edge, 8-1 dominance.
And their 15th straight victory in dual meets. Reyes will pick. You see he's at the southpaw on the left of your screen. He'll pick with that right jab. He's the classic amateur boxer, just wants to score points. Arthur Johnson, in becoming the first man to win 3 consecutive U.S. amateur titles, really has disdained the jab. He's a power puncher. He comes in winging hard punches with both hands, has a really solid left hook. He's coming off an operation to his right hand in January, and whether he babies that or not, we'll wait and see. Kept him from defending his title for an unprecedented 4th straight time.
And with Johnson, we'd best keep our heads up because he's studying television broadcasting.
Come on.
We told you at the top of the show that stop, box, and break were the 3 commands. You just heard a come on. Caution from the American referee to the Cuban boxer.
It's okay to ad-lib once in a while. I get kind of bored of those 3.
And again, we see that the Cubans have not really done very well at taping their boxers, as the tape comes clean from Reyes' right glove.
You saw a good right hand just preceding that from Arthur Johnson. Halfway in the first round.
Because Arthur Johnson had hurt his right hand, he's said that he's worked more on his left jab. But as you saw in that exchange, when he gets into toe-to-toe, he really likes to throw power punches and not just point-scoring jabs.
Yeah, he's more comfortable finally with the right, but you can understand how it would take a while before he does get back to using it, but is again. And here is the Cuban coach for a quarter of a century or more.
Really an amazing man. When you dissect the greatness of this Cuban team, he really deserves an awful lot of credit.
When you go back to the American wins over the Cubans in Montreal, the Olympics of '76, he was in his 13th year by then as the coach of the Cuban team.
Oh my goodness gracious. The first time that I don't believe there was a caution against the Cuban boxer for low blows. That was a warning and a recommendation by the American judge, by the American referee Bob Wimberly of Paterson, New Jersey, that a point be deducted. And when you have 2 outstanding boxers in the ring like these 2, that could be a very, very big point.
Cubans in an earlier bout were warned about an open glove, but nothing along these lines of a low blow. 15 seconds to go in the first round.
You do have the right to take away a point by a warning. You do not have to give 3 cautions, but it's very unusual to see one that quickly.
All right, round number 1 winding down. Stay with us. dominate 8-1. A tough decision against Michael Carbajal. I thought he deserved to win the bout. It went to the Cuban Marcelo. Timothy Little's the only American winner over Jose Luis Hernandez by a 2-1 margin earlier. So Cubans have won their 15th consecutive dual meet, but still hopes survive here for an American victory or two as this match closes out.
I thought Pedro Reyes won the first round of this bout, Don. He was just busier, and Arthur Johnson waited too much. But with that 1-point deduction, that could have been an even round.
How much does Reyes skip from the judges just on sheer respect in terms of being a world champion and so dominant?
Once again, that's very difficult to say. Hopefully, a judge, when he looks at the bout, judges on what's going on in the ring and not on somebody's resume.
Well, I'm not sure they did in the Carbajal fight.
That was a very nice move there by Arthur Johnson. You saw him score with the left and then duck under the counter punch by Reyes coming back.
Johnson was not undone to the fact he was facing a fighter of Reyes' caliber. He's very confident coming in, as you know, telling us last night.
Arthur Johnson almost never blocks a punch. He always slips punches, so that puts him in a position to counter punch. He has not been doing that with much regularity here today.
Reyes really, by all accounts, should not be fighting today. This is his 12th wedding anniversary. And here he is in Atlantic City. He has never lost to the United States in dual meets, looking for his 4th consecutive win here.
This is his 8th trip to the United States, Don, including the dual meets and the North American Championships and the World Championships he's been to.
His victories include those over Steve McCrory and Michael Collins, a couple of name U.S. amateurs. So he's giving Johnson all that he can handle here in the 2nd round.
He's not blowing him away. I mean, he's the reigning world champion. He's 29. He's got tremendous experience. There's Pedro Reyes on the right of your screen here. He's not blowing Johnson out of the fight, but I don't think he's let him into it yet either.
Well, Johnson trying to back him up is paying a price. He's catching a lot coming in from Reyes.
A little bit less movement from Reyes here. He's standing his ground a little bit more, pushing Johnson back. I thought Johnson had the superior power. In this kind of exchange, I would think Johnson would dominate, but he is not as yet.
Reyes still banging very, very hard, waiting in with the left hand now as the seconds wind down to the end of round 2. Of Cuba. Johnson desperately trying to get the Americans a 2nd win. On the surface, this team doesn't look that strong right now, but how do you see it, Alex, the American team?
Well, I think right now at this stage, obviously the Cubans are dominating at the dual meet level as they have throughout their career. The Americans always seem to be able, in an Olympic year, to have some people come out of the woodwork. I mean, even a name like Evander Holyfield wasn't even supposed to be on the U.S. Olympic team.
He is here today, by the way.
That's right, and he went forward, was only won the bronze in Los Angeles, but went on to become obviously such an outstanding talent. And that happens, that will happen in the Olympic trials in July. People that we've never heard of, we've never seen these dual meets, have not necessarily participated in the U.S. ABF program, will come out of the woodwork and be forces to be reckoned with on the United States team. But they're going to need to improve substantially between now and then, even without the Cubans. There's Evander Holyfield, the undisputed cruiserweight, junior heavyweight champion of the world.
And some say the man with the best chance to someday down the road challenge Mike Tyson as he develops as a heavyweight.
Arthur Johnson inherited Evander Holyfield's mantle as the quietest member of the United States squad. Both men of very few words.
Although Carbajal might challenge him for that. Well, Johnson thought coming in he was too strong for the Cuban. Again, disregarding almost the reputation of Reyes. But Reyes has proved a very tough customer, especially on the infighting, as it continues now in this 3rd round, midway through.
Pedro Reyes is a world champion, and he's really fighting like one. He's just doing little subtle things, not letting Arthur Johnson get set, making him move around, not letting him set his feet, get off the power.
Solid look. Down goes Johnson. He hit him with a ton of bricks with the left hand. He was wide open for him. A long look from the referee, and for now he'll let it continue as Reyes pours in all over him again.
Reyes came out of nowhere. Yeah, Reyes deserved that little bit of showboating he did right there. He scored a sensational knockdown against a quality boxer. Another standing 8 count. Oh,
no, just a caution for an open glove. Which again buys more time that Johnson appreciates.
Arthur Johnson coming forward. 40 seconds left in the bout. Arthur Johnson, remember in theory that punch counts only as much as a good stiff jab. My experience has been that that's nonsense. That,
of course it is.
That kind of a spectacular knockdown is taken in a tremendous account by the people scoring the fight.
It has to impress you. If you're human, you're a judge. It has to impress you and affect your scoring. 20 seconds to go in the bout, but I think Johnson is so far behind anyway, it may not matter, at least not out of it, but behind on points to Reyes.
Give Arthur Johnson credit. He is boxing back here, trying to fight back. Ooh, he just laced this man twice there on the break, and yet does not get any caution from Bob Wimberly, the American referee. He should have been cautioned. He was hitting on the break. And hitting after the bell.
The bell, the way that they want to continue. They don't want to let it go. So we will have the decision between Reyes and Johnson from Atlantic City right after this. And they await the decision here now. Let's have one look at the punch that dropped him. It was a dandy.
Just watch the Reyes left hand. Reyes with his back to you. Watch Arthur Johnson's right. Reyes rears back in his left, gets all his power behind it. A little bit of a delayed reaction as Johnson's legs go stiff and he goes down.
To his credit, though, he recovered well. He finished the bout. Here's the decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this contest with a score of 2-1 in the red corner, Pedro Reyes.
Reyes wins another one for Cuba. Not that they need it. Their lead now is 9-1. More boxing a little later on from Atlantic City. But right now, let's go back to New York and join Frank Gifford.
Our 27th year celebration continues on ABC's Wide World of Sports. We'll have more boxing for you later in our show. And next, the Kentucky Derby trial. But first, yesterday, the Baltimore Orioles snapped their record 21-game losing streak. They did it with a 9-0 win over the Chicago White Sox, giving new Orioles manager Frank Robinson his first victory of the season. Frank joins us now from Chicago. And Frank, I understand the team bus was late arriving to the stadium last night. Did you have mixed emotions as to whether they arrived or not?
Well, I was a little worried, Frank. I thought maybe someone had kidnapped the bus and was going to hold the players for hostages. But I knew that Fugosi wouldn't allow that. He was sending an escort to get them to the ballpark. No, all kidding aside, it was just heavy traffic and they had trouble getting to the ballpark.
Well, Frank, we're not congratulating you on that single win. I know you wouldn't want that, but I think we're congratulating you with the grace with which you handled all of this. Now, how do you take a team that is this early in the season, 15.5 games out? How do you put it back together again, and how do you keep it together?
Well, the one thing is, Frank, I think we are together as a ball club because coming through the 21-game losing streak, we kept our heads up. We went out and played hard, so I don't have to worry about keeping the team together. Now is the idea of getting them a positive attitude and continuing to go out here and win ball games. We can do that by getting into our 24-man roster and getting it settled. It's a little unsettled now, with the injuries and things like that. And I think if we can do that, we can go on and win some ball games.
Frank, we want to thank you for joining us. I know it's been a very tough time, and good luck during the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
But as you know, many sports teams have their nemesis. The Brooklyn Dodgers have the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Lakers have the Boston Celtics, and the Boston Bruins have the Montreal Canadiens.
ABC's Wide World of Sports Athlete of the Week is brought to you by Acura, Legend and Integra. Precision crafted performance exclusively at your Acura dealer.
This is a sight that hasn't been seen in the Boston Garden for 45 years.
Check deep. Now with it, Neely trying to break in. Tough angle. Cuts in front. Scores!
The Boston Bruins are usually cleaning out their lockers after a playoff series against the Montreal Canadiens.
Casper cutting in. Shot. Score!
But finally, the jinx was broken. After 18 consecutive playoff series losses to Montreal, the Bruins won. They could hardly believe it, even days later.
Felt like something disastrous was going to happen, like there was going to earthquake and the arena ice was going to open up and swallow everybody up, and it wasn't going to happen.
I didn't really have a heck of a lot of confidence playing against Montreal because as a player I lost to them 6 times, and they always found a way to come back.
Montreal's most dramatic comeback was in 1979. The infamous many men on the ice penalty was whistled against the Bruins, giving the Canadiens an extra man. Montreal took advantage of the penalty, tied the game, and then they won it in overtime. But this current group of players didn't dwell on the past. Anchored by a solid defense that included 33-year-old goaltender Reggie Lemelin, the Bruins shut down the high-powered Canadians. Lemelin was outstanding, stopping 28 of 29 shots in the deciding game. Today, we salute the Boston Bruins for their accomplishment and honor them as ABC's Wide World Athletes of the Week. As you recall, they finished the second round play today, and it was Ray Floyd and Greg Norman. After 2 rounds, they were tied at 9 under par. That second round suspended from yesterday because of weather. In the third round, early going, Ray Floyd, Mike Donald are 9 under par. Greg Norman has lost 1 shot to par. Let's go now to Jim McKay in Louisville.
The sky is blue and crystal clear behind the twin spires of Churchill Downs as a record opening day crowd has turned out for this year's running of the Derby Trial. The field is already on the track, a field of 7 horses going in the Derby Trial, which should be one of particular interest, the strongest field that we've had in some time in this final tune-up race for the Kentucky Derby. I'm Jim McKay, and briefly, as we begin, this is our own happy birthday, you know, a little pat on the back to us. 27 years for ABC's Wide World of Sports. Week from today, of course, we begin the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, and the Belmont. But this is the last tune-up, as I said, and most of the week the talk has been about 2 horses here. First of all, Cephas, who is trained by the estimable Woodford Cephas Stevens, Woody Stevens, and named after his trainer, and King Post, the winner earlier this spring of the Jim Beam Stakes at Turfway Park. However, the betting today does not reflect King Post as the second favorite, but we'll see that in a moment. First of all, let's consider the specifics of this race this afternoon. This is the Derby Trial. There you see the purse. The distance, a mile. That's a full quarter of a mile shorter than the Derby itself. The track is fast, but the times have not been particularly good today. You see the temperature, as I said, it's a magnificent afternoon. The wind will not be a factor. Now, let's take a look at the odds as you get another look at the big crowd in the Twin Spires. There you see Lover's Trust at 7-2, number 2. Cephas is the favorite at 8-5. Jim's Orbit at 8-1. 14-1 for Frosty the Snowman. Then we have number 5, King Post at 5-1 today. Morgan's Levy at 30-1. And Pastorell, second favorite of the betting, at 5-2. That's something of a surprise there. Let's bring in our expert on the sport, Charles E. Canty. And why don't we take a look at some of these horses?
All right. Well, Cephas, of course, is one of our favorites, and Woody Stevens has won 3 of the last 5 Derby trials. In fact, he used the Derby trial to prep Cephas's granddaddy, Cannonade, for his Derby victory in '74. So earlier today, we talked to Woody and asked him why he's so partial to the Derby trial as a springboard.
I've always loved getting a race over the track, and I think it's a week before the Derby. It's just perfect. It's a good, solid move. It tightens the horse down good. If he's the type of horse that will take it, I think it does a lot for him. Getting over that racetrack is important, too.
Well, Cephas. Now, how about King Post? Do you see him at 5-1? He's a pretty good horse.
Yes, he is. He upset the Jim Beam. He was bred in Ohio by his owner, Mark Warner, who says that this gelding is not particularly attractive. In fact, he compares him to looking like an aardvark. But pretty as does. He's won over $440,000, and he'll make his presence felt today.
A very good 4th in the Jim Beam was Jim's Orbit.
Yeah, he's a hard-knocking Texas bred. He's not exactly a household name, but he's been right there, Jim, in major races such as the Sapling and the Arlington, Washington Futurity and the aforementioned Jim Beam.
Pastorell hasn't raced in 7 weeks, but they've got him up there, second favorite.
He hasn't raced much in his lifetime, but he's never been off the board, and he's not been beaten here at Churchill Downs, and he defeated a Risen Star down in New Orleans.
How do you see this race being run, Charlesie?
Well, we've got 3 legitimate speed horses here with Lover's Trust and Pastorell, and we've got 1 more in here, speed horse-wise, Frosty the Snowman, and they should set a legitimate pace. The question is whether this race is going to be long enough for Cephas. I think Woody is really looking just to set him up for next week when he gets that 1.25 miles.
And we mentioned way back at the beginning of Wide World this afternoon that Cephas is a son of Caveat, and Caveat won this race in his 3-year-old year. There's the stakes record by Ack and the track record by Live Action. I have an idea they won't be broken today. Could be, but the track has not been running that fast. And now they're beginning to move into the starting gate. That would be time to take it upstairs on this beautiful afternoon to the man who'll call the race for you, Dave Johnson. Here we go, Dave.
Churchill Downs is one of the few tracks with a chute, so that a 1-mile race here is around 1 turn and starts way over in the parking lot. And several of the horses have moved into line already. Let's watch and listen to the last of them as they get ready for the start of the Derby trot.
I got your tail there, Patrick.
Starter Tommy Wagner directing traffic at the gate.
Pull your horse out of there, Sharon.
Cephas now the 3-2 favorite.
Pull the 3 horse out of that speed. All right, that's good, that's good. He's just too far up in it, that's all. All right, let's get him in there.
Okay, stop right there. Hear him down. Hear him down.
This number 6 horse, Morgan's Levy, won the Tremont Stakes at 2. He has not developed into one of the great 3-year-olds. Hoping for a chance at the Derby, though, this afternoon.
All right, set easy now.
And that's Pat Day, king of the hill here in the Jockey Column. All set. And they're off. Cephas away a bit slowly along the inside. There goes the roan colt Lover's Trust taking command with Wesley Ward in the irons. Now in front by a length and a quarter. Frosty the Snowman is in the 2nd spot. Pastoral on the outside races 3rd. Morgan's Levy on the outside races 4th by a half. Jim's Orbit along the inside is 5th. Then comes King Post, and then it's another 9 lengths back to Cephas. Cephas at this point is about 18 lengths off the lead. Now down the backstretch after the first quarter in 23 2/5 seconds. Lover's Trust enjoying a 1-length advantage, and on the outside now Early Fires puts Frosty the Snowman in gear, a close-up second. Between horses Morgan's Levy, Jim's Orbit finding room along the inside and moving up with every stride. Pastoral on the outside is 5th. Then comes King Post, and about 5 back to Cephas as they round the far turn, the half, in 47 1/5 seconds. It's Lover's Trust in front by 1 now. On the outside, here comes Frosty the Snowman making his bid. Pastoral is 3rd. King Post in gear along the inside. Jim's Orbit, then Morgan's Levy, and with a 1/4 mile to go, the favorite Cephas is just starting to roll with Eddie Maple aboard. 3/16 of a mile to go. In front from the start, Lover's Trust. Now Frosty the Snowman challenges, and down the stretch they come. A furlong to go. Heads apart on the front end. Lover's Trust on the inside, holding the lead by a head. On the outside, Frosty the Snowman. Velasquez now has King Post, the Jim Dean winner on the outside flying, and Jim's Orbit hits a 4-horse finish. On the far outside, closest to us, it was King Post. Jim's Orbit along the inside, who saved a lot of ground, was toward the rail, and I believe it's those two in a photo for the win. 1:38 2, the final time, well off the track and stakes record, but it's a photo finish in the trial.
A photo finish. If you have to guess, we would guess Jim's Orbit. Is that the way you saw it, Charlesy?
I honestly wouldn't be able to call it from here, Jim. It was awfully
tight. Very tight.
A good close finish by those 3 horses.
Well, but Cephas was not able to make it. It appeared to me that he was pretty well blocked from the 8th pole in.
He certainly didn't have the clearest of sailing room, and he made a big run. He closed an enormous amount of ground. As we mentioned earlier, 1 mile is just not his game. He made that big move, such as he did in winning the Tropical to Park Derby. He couldn't get up any better than 5th, but he did close through the stretch, and although he didn't have any open shot.
And is it Jim's? I was just going to say, is that the winner we're looking at, number 3? Well, let's take another look at it right now. Jim's Orbit on the inside in the orange and red silks there.
And here comes King Post on the very outside with the red cap, the chestnut horse with the white star, and they're bearing down on the 2 leaders, inside or outside.
Leader was Lover's Trust, number 1, the gray horse. And here they are. Watch on the outside, King Post.
But see, at this point, also notice Cephas just in behind. He really has somewhere to go. He just doesn't seem to have a whole lot of kick. Now, whether that was because he was steadied earlier or he just got used too hard trying to go a mile. And there it is. I think King Post. Whoa, I don't know.
No. If I had to guess, I would still guess the inside horse, Jim's Orbit. But that was extremely close. Could even have been a dead heat for second, possibly. But we still don't know who won. Very, very unofficial here today. Nowhere near the stakes or tracks record, but that's been the nature of the track today. Among Lover's Trust, Jim's Orbit, and King Post, the number 1, 3, and 5 horses in the race. King Post, remember, won impressively in the Jim Beam Stakes at Turfway Park earlier this spring. Jim's Orbit was 4th in that race, but a very good 4th. And Lover's Trust, well...
Jim, he was won 7 of 11 lifetime starts, and he was only beaten to 3 lengths in the Flamingo after leading all the way, so he was a legitimate part of this race.
Carries the Good Housekeeping seal.
Aquaban can help you get rid of the bloat every month. I can tell.
This adrenaline is pumping. Are you a naturally competitive person?
Actually, I'm not.
No?
No, but...
You just said it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when you get here.
Well, I just feel that I have to do the best I can, and...
Do the best you can. This woman will walk out of here with $26,100. Karen, that feels pretty good.
That feels real good.
All right, let's do it, folks. For the $25,000 additional dollars, here is your first subject. Go.
Private terms and the filly from the West winning colors take off in an American classic. It's the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby live as the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge begins. All next Saturday on ABC Sports.
Back live at Churchill Downs, where the result of the Derby trial has been posted, but it is still unofficial. It has not been made official because there is a steward's inquiry against the number 4 horse who finished in 4th place. So it's not against the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd horses. The winning jockey, Shane Romero, is a cousin of Randy Romero, who will be riding Seeking the Gold in the Kentucky Derby. He was taken off Risen Star, one of the many favorites, if you will, for next week's big race. Still unofficial, Jim's Orbit, the number 3 horse, the winner, that was the one on the rail. Second, King Post, who was on the outside, and in between them, in 3rd place, the number 1 horse, Lover's Trust, who had led most of the way. A good example of a horse saving ground along the rail. Jim's Orbit. So, good day for the Romero family. Let's take a look now from the top of the stretch. Well, here they are. Lover's Trust is on the lead. That's the gray horse on the rail right now. Frosty the Snowman right alongside. But on the rail is the 3 horse, Jim's Orbit. Now here they come, still a 1/4 of a mile to go, remember, at the head of the stretch at Churchill Downs. On the far outside is King Post in the blue cap. Cephas and the yellow cap between horses. Looks like he could have gotten through. He could have gotten through if he had the speed today. He had enough room. Yeah. But it was still, at this point, Lover's Trust, the number 1 horse, on the lead. The gray horse still leading. On the rail, though, watch Jim's Orbit. As we said, he saved ground all the way along. Looks almost beaten at this point. But watch the spurt that he's got at the end. Maybe he'd like another 1/4 of a mile next Saturday. Jim's Orbit, as we said, ridden by Shane Romero. Trained by Clarence Picu. Owned by James Cottrell. Switches to the right-hand whip as they near the finish line. And look at all these horses within a length and a half at the finish. 5 horses within a length and a half. Here comes the 5 horse King Post, nearest to you. Just the bob of the head at the wire. And there, Jim's Orbit. A matter of inches ahead of the number 5 horse King Post, and then the 1 horse Lover's Trust. Look at that. This is the official photo. No more than about 2 inches between 2nd and 3rd place. A tremendous finish in the Derby trial, and it'll be interesting to see it, and we'll take a little time to find that out, which of these horses will go on to the Kentucky Derby a week from today. The horses not only weigh in, but they have to weigh out to make sure that they weigh the same when they finish the race as they did when they started. The inquiry showed nothing, so 4th place will go to Frosty the Snowman, and 5th place to the favorite, Cephas. Still not official, however. They have not posted the prices. Okay, now it's official. A good price on Jim's Orbit, $21, $8.20 and $5.80. King Post at $6.40 and $4. And number 1, Lover's Trust, paying $4 to show. We're going to be back here with a preview of next week's Kentucky Derby, and we're going to be going to more of the U.S.-Cuba boxing live from Atlantic City. Right now, however, we're going to take another break. Wow, what a finish in the Derby trial.
Today, a spectacular field of 3-year-olds will attempt to join the ranks of these legendary champions as the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge begins. From the Twin Spires at Churchill Downs, the first leg starts. It's the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby. On May 21st, the second jewel will be awarded at the Preakness Stakes. Then, June 11th, the final test of a champion to endure the 1.5-mile track at the Belmont Stakes. If one horse can capture all 3 races, a total $5 million purse awaits. Witness the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge on 3 very special editions of ABC's Wide World of Sports.
From Caesars in Atlantic City, Don Chevrier, Alex Wallow back with you at ringside. One more bout for the United States, and a dismal day in terms of the standings. 10 bouts to win to 1. Many of those very, very close, though. And Andrew Maynard, now a light heavyweight, will take on the Cuban Orlando Despena. Maynard, certainly one of the leading lights of this team, Alex.
In the red corner, many people say that Andrew Maynard may be our best chance to win a gold medal in Seoul in September. He's going to be trying to do something today that no U.S. boxer has ever done in the history of the U.S.-Cuba duels, and that's beat a Cuban. We are 0-10 at 178 pounds. He's coming off an ankle injury that you may have seen that he suffered in the semifinals of the Pan Am Games last year. He did come back to win the U.S. title. He's going in today against Orlando Despena, who is not the #1 Cuban light heavyweight. Pablo Romero is. Pablo Romero was the opponent with Andrew Maynard when Maynard did injure his right ankle last year. Despena does have some international experience, won an international tournament in Europe last year.
And they get the banging underway early here in this first round, wasting no time.
Well, if Despena wants to trade with Andrew Maynard's going to oblige him. He's not letting his hands go now, but very, very shortly, Andrew Maynard is going to throw hard power punches with both hands. He is probably the least in terms of amateur style of the whole U.S. team.
He's not very patient, doesn't use the jab to set things up, likes to wail away with both hands, and that's what he's doing, and that's what Despena's corresponding with.
Yeah, exactly. He's looking right now in a mirror. Despena's come out and just totally taken the play away from Maynard in the opening second. He's jumped all over him. Which is something that Pablo Romero tried to do last year in the Pan Am Games. Oh, right hand there by Maynard. Maynard also has a Teflon screw in his right thumb, and he said he's a little bit tentative with that right hand. Plus the right ankle injury, you would think he's lost some power, but he didn't show it in that punch.
Not at all. Very impressive in the U.S. Nationals earlier this month, under the watchful eye of Ray Leonard. Here to urge him on now, and down to one knee goes the Cuban. Jumps up like a jack in the box, but Leonard's pleased, and so is the American team. Despena not as experienced as Romero, who dominates this division and has over the years. He's been boxing 7 years, but in some trouble now against Maynard.
Although Despena won the first minute of the round, his style is just perfect for Andrew Maynard. He loves to go toe-to-toe.
Still almost half a round to go. You indicated to me, Alex, before this bout, Maynard had a good chance to take this man out if all went well for him.
If his ankle held up and his hand, another great tremendous shot. Right hand. Despena hurt and holding on, and he could take a standing 8 count.
There's the left to put him down to make sure of the count.
And if you want to talk about a case of deja vu, I can assure you that Andrew Maynard scored that left hook a second after the referee said break. But in this case, unlike the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles in the light heavyweight bout, the referee did not disqualify Andrew Maynard, as he did Evander Holyfield.
Evander Holyfield, the Yugoslav referee. Kevin Berry of New Zealand got the win, but one more knockdown, one more count, and this Cuban is out of here. And he's still got the better part of a minute to get through the round.
The Cuban is very game, but he's just walking into that right hand.
And that is, no, just a break. I thought for a moment that might be it. They watch the boxers very carefully in amateur boxing. 30 seconds to go for Despena to survive this round.
Cuban boxer Despena gets a caution. That's the least of his problems right now. He wants to survive this round.
He appreciates the time he got from the caution, I'm sure. American referee working this one.
You might see Ray Leonard in the background there, standing just to the left of Ollie Dunlop.
With Evander Holyfield, and now the American is down on one knee. Just like that, Maynard got caught with only seconds to go in the round. What a first round this has been, the light heavyweight bout.
You cannot be saved by the bell.
Beating Orlando Despena of Cuba 2 knockdowns to 1.
It's difficult to see if Andrew Maynard has re-injured his leg. The Cuban Despena was told by Segura in his corner. He looks trying to gingerly to step on it there. The Cuban corner told Despena that his leg is hurt, go after him. And it looks to me like that right ankle is not 100%, Don.
Perhaps not. He nailed him, the Cuban did, with just seconds to go on the first round after a standing count and the knockdown that followed by Andrew Maynard. These two are head hunting and body banging, and you get no idea that it's going to go 3 rounds, as now the Cuban tends to dominate Maynard.
The problem for Maynard is that right hand that he was getting home with such regularity in the first round, he just can't get the power because of the injury to the right ankle.
And the Cuban is very effective with his body shots, wearing Maynard down here in the second round. Maynard totally dominated his man for the first 2 minutes and 40 seconds of round 1. But the knockdown has given Despaigne a new lease on life. He caught him with a very tame-looking left hand just at the end of the round.
He hit him with a body blow on the left side. Ooh, tremendous right hand by Despaigne, and Maynard took it.
That certainly wasn't as forceful as the one that took him down earlier.
You see Despaigne trying to work Maynard's body, and Maynard is definitely trying to get his body away. I think those body punches are eating Andrew Maynard up.
I think they are too. That's been the difference. Halfway in the round. Despaigne, very clever, realized he had a guy who might take him out, so he had to try to wear down the pace that Maynard was setting by going to the body. It's been a very effective move in this round.
And Maynard is still dangerous. Make no mistake about that.
Each man still very dangerous.
Ooh, again, the right hook clipped Despaigne on the chin. Maynard just missed with that one.
Nobody is competing for a decision here in this one. They're both intent on ending it.
Referee telling the Cuban when he says stop, he wants them to stop punching and step back. With the right hand by Cuban, Despaigne scoring with Maynard.
Referee Dr. Ray Carney of Cincinnati.
Remember that in theory,
oh, good left.
In amateur boxing, the power of the punch does not count.
Supposedly.
In theory. I have yet to see a jab landed in this bout.
You won't see many from Maynard. He doesn't believe him.
He said he promised Sugar Ray Leonard he'd throw him in this bout, but he said, I'll forget that 1.5 jabs into the fight.
And he did.
He didn't throw the jab and a half.
Inside 20 seconds now in the second round. They've thrown so many punches. They've taken so many hard shots. They've both got to be very weary as they hang on down to the 10-second mark.
Maynard looks a little bit wearier, holding his hands down at his side.
Stay with us. Round 2 coming to a close. Getting ready for the Olympics, hopefully. Into a third round against Orlando Despaigne. It has been a battle in Atlantic City for the first 2.
And I'd really be interested to see what the scorecards show right now, Don. And these two have just been scoring bombs from the beginning.
Look at the bombs unloading here, both ways.
No skill, conditioning, and guts. No technique. It's just all heart.
Well, Evander Holyfield, you see him there standing at ringside, can relate to Maynard. This was his division. You referred to it earlier, that Maynard's competing for in terms of the United States Olympic team.
Difficult to see. Watch the right ankle of Andrew Maynard as he backs out. He does not seem to be favoring as much as he was early in the second round.
There's Holyfield, undisputed cruiserweight champion, now moving to the heavyweight rank. He likes what he sees from Maynard. Maynard taken down just seconds before the end of the first round. He had a standing 8 count, a knockdown of Despaigne prior to that. They both somehow stayed upright since that point. I don't know how. Still half the third round of weather. This bruising pace continues.
And in my scorecard, this bout is still up for grabs.
I think it is too.
I had first round to Maynard, second round to Despaigne, and a pretty even, I don't know who got the better of those exchanges in the first minute of this round.
Not an easy fight to score by any means. Because there's no set technique, it's just bombs away, and if your eye's quick enough, you might catch the guy throwing most of them and scoring with the majority. If not, you've got a problem. So So as champions from 84 and 76, Holyfield and Leonard look on. A guy who'd like to be a champion in the Olympics, Andrew Maynard, takes it down to the closing seconds against a very tough Cuban, Orlando de España.
And as Sugar Ray Leonard did against Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Robinson did in almost all his fights, Andrew Maynard in the final 30 seconds coming up is going to have to try to steal this round. Flurry at the end.
U.S. team urging them on. Hit him in the back, but the Cuban turned and invited him. His action stopped just for a moment. So take your pick. This one is going to be very tough for the judges. They might have erred along the way so far today. You can forgive them for getting the wrong man as the winner of this one. It's that close, I think. We will have the decision in the light heavyweight bout in a moment. How well some of these American fighters fought. Let's see how this one turned out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this contest by a 2-1 score in the blue corner, Andrew Maynard.
So Maynard pulls out a very tough battle against a competitive Cuban who was with him blow for blow all the way, Orlando de España, to make it 10-2 final. Sugar Ray Leonard takes some solace along with Evander Holyfield in that closing bout victory for Maynard. The United States team took some rough blows along the way and a couple of questionable decisions, but no question the Cubans were the better team on the day, once again for the 15th straight dual meet. But for Maynard, a moment he will long remember, because victories against Cuban boxers are few and far between for the Americans. Let's look at what happened earlier in the day for you here. The Cubans got off to a very quick 5-0 lead on wins by Manuel Martinez, Ronaldo Mesa, Julio Gonzalez, and Juan Hernandez, and then Juan Carlos Lemus got a win. Then it did turn for the United States. After the fourth bout of the day, that was the Lemus win. Up came Timothy Littles to get a split decision over Hernandez of Cuba. Jose Luis Hernandez, and that's all the Americans got, as then wins by Espinosa, Gonzalez. And then the controversial bout that came along later was Marcelo beating Michael Carbajal. But it all ended sweetly for the United States, Alex. Maynard getting the win, a great bout just before Sevon defeating Ray Mercer in the heavyweight bout.
Don, it was a great way to finish for the United States team. As you look at the winner there, Andrew Maynard, who really is a personable young man. He has to take satisfaction in the win, but he also must realize, as must this United States team, and as I'm sure their coach Kenny Adams knows, that they have a lot of work to do now, between now and the trials at box office in July and the Olympics in Seoul in September. They've just got to get themselves better in all aspects of their game. Even if the Cubans don't show up, they have to raise the level of their ability in order to be competitive with the Eastern European countries and the Soviet Union.
Well, this man, Alex, certainly gave himself a confidence boost. Andrew Maynard with his closing bout victory over España. He's all set now for those Olympic trials in Concord, California. The box off in Las Vegas, and ABC Sports will have them both, as you said, in July. 10 wins to 2 for the Cubans, but there were some bright moments for this United States team competing here in Atlantic City this afternoon. So that's it for Alex and myself. Let's go back to Jim McKay at Churchill Downs.
Again, this was the photo finish for the Derby trial today. Couldn't have been closer. The winner on the rail there, furthest from you, Jim's Orbit. On the outside, closest to you, King Post was second, and third in the middle was Lover's Trust. There are the prices. Jim's Orbit paying a good price. King Post and Lover's Trust. You see the other price. Complete order of finish. Jim's Orbit, King Post, Lover's Trust, Frosty the Snowman, Pastorell. Cephas finally was placed 6th, not 5th, and Morgan's Levy. Well, right now I'm standing with a young man who has been, well, coach and best friend and babysitter to the horse that everybody's talking about for next week's Kentucky Derby, and that would be the filly Winning Colors. This is Jeff Lucas, the son of and assistant trainer to Wayne Lucas. First of all, you have another horse, Tejano. Is he going to run or not?
Well, this is something that we've been back and forth on, this issue, since his race in the Wood Memorial. He's improved every race this year, but with the anticipated 20-horse field here at Louisville and things that you encounter, the decision was made today not to run Tejano and await the Preakness. We just feel he'd be better suited for that type of race, and we'll go with Winning Colors.
Winning Colors has had a long layoff. Does that bother you?
No, 28 days has been about what she's used to. We've spaced her races throughout the year. She's had 5 starts this year, all spaced 3 or 4 weeks. It's really worked well the last 2 times she's run, so we're not afraid to take the 28 days and train her up to it.
Thanks very much for being with us. Jeff Lucas, assistant trainer of Winning Colors. Here's Dave and Charlesy back in again. Quickly, who do you see as the favorites?
It's very, very tough. We have in the field 49.